They thought winter would hide what they did. They thought a powerless neighborhood, a frozen night, and a quiet man would let them take whatever they wanted. They were wrong, because the house they mocked was built by a Navy SEAL who knows how to hold a line, and the dog standing beside him was trained to recognize danger before it speaks. On the coldest night of the storm, greed knocked on the wrong door, pride crossed the wrong boundary, and karma did not wait for morning. What followed wasn't violence, it was justice, cold, calm, and unavoidable. Before we continue, share this story with someone who still believes that right and wrong matter. Comment where you're watching from, and subscribe for more true stories where courage stands firm and redemption always comes due. The Red Shoe. In the winter woods of Jackson, winter pressed against Jackson, Wyoming, with a silence so cold it seemed to hollow out the world. Evan Brooks stepped onto the porch of his mountain cabin, exhaling a thin plume of breath that drifted past his unshaven jaw. At 40, Evan stood tall and broad-shouldered, built like a man who had endured far more than weather. His face carried the angular planes of someone trained to survive storms, both on land and within himself. A short, trimmed beard softened the severity of his square jaw, though silver threaded through his temples like frost. His dark brown eyes, usually gentle with strangers, sharpened into something dangerous whenever instinct whispered of threat. Evan moved with a slight hitch in his gait, an old knee injury from his time as a Navy SEAL. The injury had shaped him, but never weakened him. It made his steps patient, deliberate. He trusted purpose over speed. And in the emptiness of this freezing morning, purpose found him first. On the top step of the porch lay a child's red shoe. It was impossibly small, clean except for a smear of fresh mud, and its double-knotted laces told a troubling story. Children did not lose shoes tied like that. Someone had taken it off. Someone had carried it here. Evan's breath tightened inside his chest, the soldier in him rising before a thought had a chance to catch up. Beside him, Max lowered his head to inspect the shoe. Max was a 5-year-old German shepherd, bred for discipline and trained with a precision that made him more partner than pet. His coat was a striking black and tan pattern, thick and glossy even in the biting wind. His ears, rigid, alert, framed eyes the color of amber glass, eyes that read a landscape as easily as one reads a map. A black harness hugged his muscular frame, marked with bold white words. Service dog, do not pet. Max sniffed once, then straightened. His tail froze, his chest expanded, and his ears snapped forward toward the tree line. Danger! Evan felt it before Max made a sound. The bond between them was tight enough to pulse like a second heartbeat. Years of missions, mostly unspoken, all unforgiving, had carved a mutual awareness as sharp as any weapon Evan had ever carried. Together, man and dog had once been a quiet, unstoppable force, the kind no criminal saw coming until it was too late, the kind certain men still had nightmares about. A soft crunch broke the silence. From the shadowed line of snow-burdened pines emerged a second dog. This one was a ghost of a German shepherd, larger than Max but painfully thin. His coat, once silver sable, hung in ragged tufts across protruding ribs. Scars latticed his flank, and his left hind leg trembled under his weight. He was no stray looking for scraps. He was a survivor at the edge of collapse. The dog limped forward, stopping at the bottom of the porch's wooden steps. His breath came in sharp, wet bursts. Frost clung to his whiskers, and, in his eyes, wide, bright, terrified, burned something Evan recognized instantly, a plea. The dog let out a whine so raw it felt like a hand gripping Evan's spine. Then he turned his head sharply south, toward the deeper, darker part of the forest. He looked back at Evan, then south again, then Evan. Whine. Step. Whine. He was begging. Max reacted first. He planted his feet, lifted his head high, and released a single clipped bark, not loud, not threatening, but absolute in its meaning. Listen. Evan's pulse tightened. He crouched and picked up the red shoe, turning it over in his calloused hand. Cold, but not frozen. Fresh mud. No frost lining the fabric. It had been delivered minutes ago. By whom? His eyes flicked between Max, now rigid and focused, and the wounded dog who trembled as though time itself were breaking over him. Something had happened in the woods, something violent, urgent, and very small. Evan's fingers tightened around the shoe, and with that pressure came memories he wished he had left buried. A flash of another winter, another cry for help, another moment when he had been too far away to change the ending. There had been a village, a survivor, and a mistake that haunted him still, not again. The wind shifted. Snow swept sideways, thickening as the storm above the valley grew teeth. Evan looked up, scanning the ridgeline as the sky darkened with an approaching front. A blizzard was marching toward them. Any trail, footprints, scent, blood would soon vanish. "Max," Evan murmured. Max's body tensed with readiness. His entire posture transformed from companion to operative, to threat. He was a silent weapon against any man cruel enough to harm a child. A sudden flash of headlights cut through the swirling snow. A vehicle crested the bend of the narrow mountain road, tires crunching over ice. The engine belonged to a police SUV, Jackson Police Department white and blue, its presence both expected and ill-timed. Evan recognized the model before he recognized the silhouette behind the wheel. Deputy Liam Carter, young, earnest, too kind for the badge he wore. Liam was in his late 20s, tall but not yet filled out, with sandy blonde hair that curled slightly at the edges of his hat. Freckles dusted the bridge of his nose, giving him an innocence most officers lost early in their career. But what defined him most were his eyes, blue, honest, and haunted by the fear of failing people who needed him. Liam parked and stepped out, pulling his scarf tighter around his neck. He paused when he saw the two dogs, one perfectly controlled, the other on the verge of collapse, and the red shoe held in Evan's hand. "Mr. Brooks, what happened?" Liam asked, voice unsteady. Evan didn't answer immediately. He looked at Max, then at the wounded stray, then at the dark, snow-choked forest. And for the first time that morning, he wondered not what he should do, but whether he had enough time to choose at all. The house in armor, Luke did not build the second wall in a hurry. He worked the way men do when they expect interruption, when every movement is measured for efficiency rather than comfort. The work began before dawn and ended well after dark. He wore the same navy winter jacket, the same gloves repaired at the fingertips, the same boots dusted white with plaster and insulation fibers. Inside the brick shell of the old house, a narrow corridor of air took shape, 12 inches wide, silent, still, a space where cold would lose its voice. Luke moved with a quiet intensity. He measured twice, cut once, then checked again. Every joint was sealed, every seam reinforced. This was not carpentry learned from a book. This was a mind shaped by environments where failure meant exposure. Ranger watched from the same spot near the doorway, amber eyes following Luke's hands. The dog shifted only when Luke crossed the room, repositioning instinctively to maintain that half-step lead. His nails clicked softly against the hardwood floor, the only sound besides the wind scratching at the outer walls. Outside, the neighborhood took notice. The laughter started small. A few men passing by slowed their pace, pointing at the thickened windows. Someone called the house the Turtle. Someone else called it the Bunker. The name stuck. Across the street, Brent Walsh leaned against a rusted sedan with his usual crowd. He was bundled in a puffy jacket 2 sizes too big, the hood framing his shaved head. A thin scar ran from his left eyebrow into his hairline, the souvenir of a bar fight he liked to retell as a victory. Brent liked an audience. He liked feeling watched. "Look at that," he said loudly one afternoon, nodding toward Luke's house. "Man's building a fort like it's the end of the world." The others laughed on cue. Luke stepped out just then, carrying a bundle of insulation boards. He did not look at them. He did not change his pace. Ranger followed. The laughter faltered, as it always did. Ranger stopped at the edge of the sidewalk. His body angled slightly, his head lifted. He did not growl. He did not bare teeth. He simply stood, blocking space that did not belong to him but could not be taken. Brent felt it again. That sensation of being weighed, measured, found wanting. "Nice dog," Brent said, forcing a grin. "Real intimidating." Luke paused. He turned slowly, eyes calm, unreadable. "He's working," Luke said. His voice was level, almost mild. "You should give him space." It was not a threat. That was what made it worse. Brent snorted and waved a dismissive hand, but he took a step back without meaning to. Ranger did not move. Luke resumed his work. That night, the temperature dropped hard. Wind off Lake Erie slammed into the neighborhood with renewed force. The first power flicker came just after sunset. By 9, the streetlights died completely, plunging the block into a gray-blue darkness broken only by the occasional glow of candles behind curtains. Luke's house went dark as well, but the silence inside was different. The air held. Luke stood in the center of the living room, breath slow, steady. The second wall was finished on the north side now. He placed a palm against the inner surface and felt nothing but neutral stillness. No seepage, no draft. Ranger lay nearby, head resting on his paws, eyes open. The knock came at 9:43 p.m. Soft, hesitant, the sound of someone who did not want to be heard but could not afford to leave. Luke stiffened. Ranger rose in one smooth motion. Luke approached the inner door, listening. Another knock, louder now. A woman's voice, thin with cold. "Please," she said. "I know someone's in there." Luke opened the outer vestibule door just enough to see. The woman standing on the stoop was in her early 30s, slender, 5'6", maybe. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy knot, strands frozen to her cheeks. Her skin was pale beneath the streetlight glow, lips tinged blue. She wore a nurse's jacket over layered sweaters, the name badge clipped crookedly to her chest. Maya Collins, RN. In her arms was a boy of about 6, thin, brown hair plastered to his forehead with sweat despite the cold. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "I'm sorry," Maya said quickly, words tumbling. "The power's out everywhere. He's shaking. I didn't know where else." Luke opened the door wider. "Come in," he said. Maya hesitated, eyes darting past him to Ranger. Ranger stepped back. Sat, looked away. That was permission. Inside, warmth wrapped around them immediately. Maya gasped, a sharp sound she tried to swallow. "Oh my God," she whispered. Luke closed the door behind them, sealing the vestibule. Ranger rose and moved to stand near Luke's left leg, posture alert but controlled. Outside, footsteps approached. Brent's voice cut through the dark, louder than necessary. "Well, well," he called. "Guess the bunker really is warm." Luke felt the shift before he saw it. Ranger's muscles tightened. Luke placed a hand on the dog's shoulder. "Stay," he murmured. Ranger stayed, but he watched the door, and so did Luke. The storm was only beginning. The white night without crying. The storm from Lake Erie struck Buffalo head-on. It arrived without ceremony, swallowing sound and shape at once. Snow fell sideways, driven by wind that howled between the houses like a warning siren that never stopped. One by one, lights across the neighborhood went dark. Transformers popped in the distance. Brief flashes of blue before the city surrendered to night. Inside Luke Mercer's house, the air remained still. The warmth did not rush. It settled. Luke stood near the inner door, listening. Years of training had taught him to separate noise from meaning. The storm screamed, but beneath it he caught footsteps on packed snow. Careless, multiple, approaching. Ranger felt it too. The German shepherd stood rigid beside Luke's left leg, ears pinned forward, muscles drawn tight beneath his thick sable coat. His amber eyes fixed on the front door, unblinking. He was no longer simply alert. He was ready. Maya Collins sat on the couch with her son, Ethan, wrapped in a wool blanket Luke had pulled from a cedar chest. Maya was tall and narrow-shouldered, her posture usually straight from years of hospital corridors, now bent protectively around her child. Her dark hair had come loose from its knot, strands clinging to her pale cheeks. She watched Ranger with a mix of fear and awe, as if unsure whether he was guardian or weapon. Ethan's shivering had slowed. His small chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. He was asleep now, exhaustion dragging him under. Luke raised a finger to his lips. Maya nodded, holding her breath. The voices outside grew louder. Brent Walsh laughed, the sound sharp and ugly in the frozen air. "See? I told you," Brent said. "Lights are out everywhere except here." Another voice answered, lower, uncertain. "Man, it's freezing. Let's just knock." Brent scoffed. "Why ask? He's got heat. That makes it community property." Luke exhaled slowly through his nose. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not step back. He rested his hand lightly on Ranger's harness. "Hold," he whispered. Ranger held. The pounding on the outer door came suddenly, hard enough to rattle the vestibule. Snow shook loose from the frame. Luke stepped forward and opened the outer door just enough to expose the storm-lit porch. Brent stood there with 3 others. Up close, the bravado cracked. His skin was flushed red from cold, his eyes bright with something close to panic. He was tall, but his frame was wiry, built for speed rather than strength. His jacket hung open at the collar, chest rising too fast. Behind him stood Kyle Denton, heavy-set, beard patchy and untrimmed, eyes darting everywhere but forward. Kyle had once been a dock worker before an injury, and too much drinking shortened his fuse. The third man, Marcus Reed, was was quieter, slim, with hollow cheeks and hands stuffed deep into his pockets, as if he wished he could disappear. Brent looked past Luke, eyes narrowing. "You've got people in there," he said. Luke met his gaze without blinking. "I've got a house," Luke replied. "You're on my porch." Ranger stepped forward 1 inch. That was all. The dog did not growl. He did not bare teeth. His presence filled the doorway, blocking access with quiet certainty. His eyes never left Brent's hands. Kyle swallowed. "Man," Kyle muttered, "that dog." Brent lifted a hand, silencing him. He smiled again, but it no longer reached his eyes. "Look," Brent said, spreading his hands. "We're all freezing. You're warm. Be neighborly." Luke's voice remained even. "Step back," he said. Brent hesitated. Pride warred with instinct. Behind Luke, Ranger's breathing slowed, deep and steady, a predator at rest, conserving energy. Marcus shifted his weight. "This is a bad idea," Marcus said quietly. "Let's go." Brent rounded on him. "Shut up." The storm chose that moment to surge, a violent gust slamming into the porch. Snow blasted sideways, stealing breath and balance. Luke did not move. Brent stumbled back a half step. Ranger advanced another inch. That was enough. Brent felt it then. Not fear exactly, but certainty. The certainty that crossing this line would end badly. That the man in front of him was not bluffing. That the dog was not decoration. "Fine," Brent snapped, backing away. "Keep your damn heat." He turned, shoving past Kyle, nearly knocking him over. "Come on!" The group retreated into the white chaos, their shapes swallowed by snow and wind. Luke closed the outer door and sealed the vestibule. The house exhaled. Maya released a shaky breath. "He didn't even raise his voice," she whispered. Luke looked down at Ranger and scratched behind his ears. "That's the point," Luke said. Ranger finally relaxed, lowering himself to the floor near the door, eyes still watchful. Hours passed. The storm intensified. Snow piled against the brick walls. Somewhere nearby, a window shattered, the sound sharp and final. No sirens came. The city was deaf tonight. Just before dawn, a new knock sounded. Not loud, not demanding, careful. Luke opened the door to find a woman standing alone. She was in her late 30s, medium height, slender but strong-looking, with ash blonde hair tucked beneath a knit cap. Her skin was fair, weathered by years of cold, and her eyes were clear blue, sharp with worry rather than fear. She wore a long wool coat cinched tight and sturdy boots dusted white. "My name is Sarah Nolan," she said. "I live 2 houses down. I saw the lights earlier. My neighbor, Mrs. Parker. She's elderly, lives alone. Her house is dark." Luke's jaw tightened. "How long?" he asked. "Since yesterday afternoon." Luke nodded once. Behind him, Ranger stood. The storm had taken its first victims, and Luke knew it would not be the last. When bullies learn their mistake. Brent did not come to ask. He came to take. The pounding on the door carried a different rhythm this time, heavier, more confident, as if repetition alone could turn ownership into fact. Snow shook loose from the porch railing with each strike. His voice cut through the storm, loud and performative. "Open up!" Brent shouted. "People are freezing out here." Luke Mercer opened the inner door and stepped into the vestibule alone. He wore no coat now, only a dark sweater, sleeves rolled once at the wrists. His posture was relaxed, shoulders loose, weight centered. The stance of a man who had learned long ago that tension wasted energy. Behind him, Ranger stood in the doorway to the living room, exactly where he always stood. Half a step forward, left side, harness snug against his chest, ears upright, muscles drawn tight beneath the sable fur. The shouting stopped. Brent stood at the edge of the porch light, snow clinging to his eyebrows, breath fogging the air. Up close, the arrogance looked thinner. His jaw worked, as if chewing words he could not quite swallow. "Look," Brent said, spreading his hands. "You've got space, heat. It's not right to keep it all to yourself." Luke met his eyes. "You're not asking," Luke said quietly. Brent's lips twitched. "I don't have to." Ranger shifted his weight. It was subtle, a single inch forward, but the effect was immediate. The dog's presence filled the vestibule like pressure, like gravity. His eyes locked onto Brent's hands, tracking every twitch, every clench. Kyle Denton hovered behind Brent, shoulders hunched, beard rimed with frost. He avoided Ranger's gaze entirely. Marcus Reed stood farther back, half-turned, as if already calculating escape. Luke's voice did not rise. "Step off my porch," he said. Brent laughed, but the sound cracked in the cold. "You think you scare me with a dog?" Luke tilted his head slightly, studying him the way a professional studies variables. "I think," Luke said, "you're confusing noise with control." Ranger did not growl. That was the warning. Brent felt it then, the certainty, that the man in front of him had faced real violence and survived it, that the animal behind him was trained not to threaten, but to finish. Brent took a step back, then another. "Whatever," he muttered, turning sharply. "This isn't over." He disappeared into the white swirl, his followers scrambling after him. Luke closed the outer door and sealed the vestibule. The house returned to its quiet, insulated stillness. Sarah Nolan stood near the staircase, arms wrapped around herself. She was slender, 5'7", her ash-blonde hair pulled into a low braid that brushed the collar of her coat. Her face was pale from cold, but her blue eyes were clear and steady. Sarah had the look of a woman who had learned to stay calm because panic helped no one. "They won't try. Again," she said. Luke nodded. "Not tonight." Sarah swallowed. "Mrs. Parker's house is still dark." Luke's jaw tightened. Evelyn Parker had taught elementary school for 40 years. He knew this because she had mentioned it once while collecting her mail, her voice cheerful, her posture proud despite the cane. She was 82, small and bird-boned, with thin white hair always pinned neatly back. She lived alone at the end of the block, stubbornly independent. Luke turned toward Ranger. The dog was trembling now, not from cold, from sound. The wind had shifted. It moaned through the alleyways with a pitch too close to memory. Ranger's breathing quickened, chest rising and falling in short bursts. His eyes flicked to the door, then away. Luke knelt. He rested his forehead gently against Ranger's, gloved hands cradling the dog's neck. "Work time," Luke whispered. Ranger hesitated. The tremor ran through him again. Then he inhaled deeply. Once, twice. The shaking slowed. He pushed his head forward into the harness, the metal rings clinking softly. Luke rose and clipped the safety rope to his belt. He handed the other end to Sarah. "You stay here," Luke said. "Lock the inner door behind us." Sarah nodded, lips pressed thin. "Be careful." Luke opened the vestibule. The storm hit like a physical blow. Snow blasted sideways, stinging exposed skin. The wind stole breath, flattened sound. The world shrank to 10 feet of white nothingness. Ranger surged forward, nose down, body low. The rope went taut. Luke followed, boots crunching through drifts that reached mid-calf. Visibility vanished almost immediately. "Find," Luke commanded. Ranger found. He moved by scent and memory, by subtle changes in snow density, by the faint metallic tang of a buried fence line. Luke kept his eyes on the rope. If it slackened, he would stop. If it snapped, he would be lost. They reached the house in minutes that felt like hours. Evelyn Parker's door was half buried. Luke shouldered it open, wood groaning in protest. Inside, the cold was absolute. The air smelled of old paper and frozen dust. "Mrs. Parker," Luke called. No answer. They found her in the bedroom, bundled beneath quilts, skin waxy pale. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Hypothermia had already taken hold. Luke did not move her outside. He worked fast. He dragged mattresses upright, pulled curtains down, stacked furniture to build a small enclosure around the bed. Ranger crawled inside on command, pressing his warm body against Evelyn's back. Luke knelt on the other side, creating a human wall. Minutes passed. Evelyn's breath deepened. Color returned, faintly to her lips. She stirred. "Cold," she whispered. "I know," Luke said softly. "You're not alone." When the storm finally eased near dawn, Luke carried Evelyn back toward warmth. And across the street, hidden behind a frozen car, Brent watched. For the first time, he understood what he had challenged, and why he had lost. The open door, and the winter that lost its bite. Morning came slowly, as if the city itself needed time to believe the storm had passed. Light seeped through the narrow gaps of Luke Mercer's shutters, pale and cautious. The wind had softened to a low sigh, snow settling instead of striking. Buffalo stood buried but breathing. Evelyn Parker slept in the living room, wrapped in layered quilts, her chest rising with steady rhythm. Color had returned to her cheeks, faint but unmistakable. The thin lines of her face looked less brittle now, the tension eased from her brow. At 82, she was small and fragile, but her grip on life had proven stubborn. Luke watched her from the doorway. He had not slept. He rarely did after nights like this. Ranger lay nearby, stretched out along the rug, his large frame relaxed at last. His ears twitched occasionally at distant sounds, but the rigid readiness was gone. The dog's amber eyes closed, opened once to check Luke, then closed again. Maya Collins stood by the window, holding a mug of tea with both hands. In daylight, she looked younger, exhaustion softening her sharp features. She was tall and slim, with olive-toned skin and dark eyes that had seen too many hospital nights. Her posture still leaned forward protectively, a habit carved by years of guarding patients and a son. "You saved her," Maya said quietly. Luke shook his head. "She saved herself." Sarah Nolan appeared at the foot of the stairs. Her ash-blonde hair was loose now, falling to her shoulders. She wore jeans and a thick sweater, sleeves pushed up, revealing strong forearms dusted with flour. She had been baking since dawn, something warm and solid to mark survival. "People are coming," Sarah said. "Not like before, just neighbors." Luke nodded once. Outside, doors opened. Figures emerged from houses that had endured the night. People moved carefully, checking on one another, voices low and unsure, like survivors after a wreck. Word traveled faster than the plows. They came in ones and twos at first. An elderly man with a red scarf, face weathered and kind. A young couple holding hands too tightly. A woman carrying blankets. No one pushed, no one demanded. Luke opened the door. Ranger stood beside him. The effect was immediate and unmistakable. Conversations faltered, movements slowed. People gave the dog space without being told. They sensed what Brent had learned too late. This was not a house to test, but Luke's door stayed open. Brent Walsh arrived near noon. He walked alone. Without his usual swagger, he looked younger, smaller. His shaved head was hidden beneath a knit cap pulled low, his jacket zipped to the chin. The scar at his eyebrow looked less like a trophy now and more like a reminder. He stopped at the bottom step. Ranger lifted his head. Luke stepped forward, blocking nothing, inviting nothing. Brent swallowed. His eyes flicked once to Ranger, then dropped to the ground. "I was wrong," he said. The words came out stiff, unused. Brent's hands clenched, then released. His voice lacked its former sharpness. "I didn't know," he added, then shook his head. "That's not true. I didn't care." Luke waited. Brent took a breath. "I won't bother you again." Luke studied him for a long moment, not with anger, with assessment. "Don't bother anyone," Luke said. Brent nodded quickly. "Yeah." He turned and left, boots crunching through slush. No one watched him go. The door remained open. Over the next hours, the house became something else entirely. Not a fortress, not a bunker, a place of pause. People warmed their hands, shared food, spoke softly about the night. Ranger accepted no touch, but he allowed proximity, his presence a steady anchor. Children watched him with wide eyes, instinctively respectful. Evelyn woke in the afternoon. She smiled when she saw the room filled with life. "Looks like school assembly," she murmured. Luke leaned closer. "You're going to be fine." She reached out, her thin fingers brushing Ranger's fur. He remained still, accepting. "Good boy," she whispered. Ranger's tail thumped once. Weeks passed. Snow melted into gray slush. Plows cleared streets. Normalcy crept back in its own cautious way. Luke returned to routine. Repairs, quiet walks, early mornings. But things had changed. Neighbors waved now, stopped to talk. Maya brought soup by twice a week, her son Ethan always asking to see the big dog. Sarah lingered longer than necessary, offering updates, sharing coffee. Luke still had his second wall. He kept it. Some protections were earned, but the lock stayed undone during daylight. The vestibule door remained unbarred. On a late March morning, Luke sat on the porch steps, sun warming his face for the first time in months. Ranger lay beside him, paws stretched forward, eyes half closed. Across the street, children laughed. Luke rested a hand on Ranger's head. The dog leaned into the touch, heavy and solid. There were walls meant to keep the cold out, and doors meant to remind you why you survived it. Sometimes the miracle is not the storm ending. Sometimes the miracle is that someone kept the door unlocked while the storm was still raging. In the middle of winter, when the world turns cruel and unforgiving, God does not always stop the cold. Instead, He places warmth in unexpected hands. He gives courage to the quiet, strength to the wounded, and loyalty to those who have already lost too much. Luke did not call it faith. Ranger did not know the word miracle. Yet, What they built together became shelter not just for bodies, but for souls. In our own lives, the cold may not come as snow. It comes as loneliness, fear, hard seasons that test our patience and break our pride. And maybe you are watching this today feeling like the door has been closed for too long. If so, remember this. God often works through ordinary people who choose to stand firm. Through small acts of protection, through kindness offered at the exact moment it is needed most. May God bless you in your home. May He guard those you love, and may He give you the courage to be someone else's shelter when the night feels too long. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need warmth today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, so stories of faith, courage, and quiet miracles can keep finding their way to those who need them most. May God's peace be with you, now and always.